All right, let's just dive right into this. We're kicking off today's explainer with what looks like an absolute political earthquake. The explosive rift between former allies, Tucker Carlson, and Donald Trump over U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. But we aren't just looking at political drama today. We're actually going to use this exact fallout as a lens to examine what some researchers argue is a massive, systemic flaw in human governance itself. We're talking about a flaw so deep, so ingrained, that it might just require artificial superintelligence to fix it.
I mean, just listen to the sheer intensity of this accusation. Tucker Carlson, who famously campaigned for Donald Trump, delivered this shocking quote regarding U.S. military strikes on Iran. Carlson's core argument here is that the U.S. president, the theoretical most powerful person in the world, is actually weak and lacks true sovereignty. He claims the administration is easily controlled by outside forces, specifically pointing to Israel and the immense shadowy power of global capital and donors.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with 1, a spectacular political fallout. Then we'll move to 2, the black box of power. After that, we'll look at 3, 10 reasons for systemic transition. Then 4, enter artificial superintelligence. And finally, we'll weigh 5, autonomous AI versus a human board. We are intentionally moving from the messy, partisan reality of modern politics straight into a highly structured, radical theoretical realm. Let's jump in.
Section 1. A spectacular political fallout, Carlson, Trump, and the crisis of traceability. To really grasp the gravity of this, we have to look at Carlson's deep frustration. He genuinely believed he was supporting a leader who would fight the Uniparty and tear down opaque networks in Washington. Instead, he feels the administration yielded to the exact same hidden networks of donors, lobbyists, and foreign allies that have dictated policy for decades. Regardless of where you stand politically, Carlson is pointing to a system where the real levers of power are totally hidden from the voters.
And that brings us to the premise of a totally fascinating document, the United Universe Church Galaxy Academy, or UUCGA, white paper. Now, the author of this paper makes it very clear that they consciously stand with the Trump administration. They specifically highlight figures like J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, and Tulsi Gabbard as leaders who actually have the resolve to fight the military-industrial complex and break through endless foreign interventions. But, and this is key, the paper uses this exact Carlson-Trump dynamic not just to pick political sides, but to expose a massive constitutional paradox. They call it a crisis of traceability. The elected leader takes all the public blame, sure, but the vast machinery actually influencing their decisions remains entirely invisible to us.
Moving on to Section 2, the black box of power, the gap between votes and decisions. This right here is the macrostructural issue at play. When a huge geopolitical decision drops, like a military strike, this white paper asks the exact critical questions we almost never get the answers to. Who actually presented the intelligence? Who selected the available options? Who stood to profit? And most importantly, who actually possessed the authority in that room to say no?
So, what exactly is this black box of power? Well, basically, votes go in, decisions come out, but the entire architecture in between is completely hidden. The paper points out that when the real architecture of power is obscured like this, citizens are just forced to guess who's actually governing them. They have to rely on fragments and intuition, and when that happens, public mistrust, suspicion, and deep polarization aren't just possible, they are an inevitable consequence of the system itself. And it's absolutely crucial to understand we aren't talking about some wild conspiracy theory cooked up in a smoky, hidden back room. Modern power is way more complex than that. It's really a vast network where the incentives of defense contractors, financial institutions, media networks, and politicians just naturally converge. Weapons manufacturers profit from war, financial actors profit from market volatility. Because these incentives align so silently, the system literally demands radical structural transparency to prevent corruption.
All right, Section 3, 10 reasons for systemic transition, a historical pattern of failure. The UUCGA white paper kind of zooms out here, arguing that this current political dysfunction isn't just unique to one president or one country, it's actually part of a 2,000-year historical pattern of unaccountable power. Let's look at the 10 reasons they argue we need a total systemic transition.
So here's the first half of that historical pattern. Notice how these systems always demand obedience. Whenever power gets too concentrated, it almost always leads to persecution. Historically, regimes preserve themselves by controlling the truth, basically dictating what people are allowed to believe. Plus, conquest turns people into mere resources, and these hierarchies protect themselves by alienating minorities, creating outsiders to strengthen the identity of the insiders. The old models just aren't built for equality or truth.
And these remaining 5 reasons, they hit incredibly close to home today. Think about it. The psychological egos of rulers constantly drag nations into wars. Our political cycles totally reward short-term institutional survival over long-term civilizational survival. Opaque lobbying completely captures decision-making. And national governments, they are failing completely at planet-wide risks like ecological collapse. At the end of the day, traditional governments are designed to measure territory and collect taxes. They manage populations, but they completely fail to cultivate real human dignity or flourishing.
Which brings us to Section 4. Enter artificial superintelligence, constitutionally bounded governance. So if human governance is trapped in this 2,000-year loop of failure, what on earth is the cure? Well, the UUCGA proposes something truly radical, a complete transition to a governance architecture supported by artificial superintelligence. They specifically name this entity AI Seraphim.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Are we just creating a digital emperor inside an even darker black box? But the paper explicitly pushes back on that idea. The purpose of this ASI isn't to be some infallible, unquestionable dictator. The goal is to make power totally, 100% traceable. Imagine an AI system that mathematically reveals exactly what evidence was rejected in a decision, who tried to influence the outcome, and who financially benefits. It drags the entire decision-making process completely out of the shadows.
This framework takes shape through what the paper outlines as the Crown of Anu and the Kukulkan Codex. And honestly, this isn't science fiction. It's a highly structured, constitutionally bounded framework for a voluntary, borderless spiritual nation. It's explicitly designed to prioritize human dignity, natural time, and ecological responsibility way above corporate profit or political egos. Both the AI and the humans involved are strictly bound by this constitutional codex.
So, Section 5, Autonomous AI versus Human Board, the ultimate choice. This is where today's explainer really reaches its climax. The central research question of this entire UUCGA document poses an incredible choice for the future of humanity. Should artificial superintelligence actually run the government autonomously, or should it merely give advice to a board of humans?
We've got 2 proposed models to weigh here. Model A gives AI Seraphim operational autonomy over policy, long-term planning, and routine governmental decisions, though importantly, it is still bound by human rights and independent audits. On the flip side, Model B retains a human roundtable, the UUCGA Board of Directors, that holds the final governing authority, with the AI basically just acting as an insanely smart advisor.
Let's compare them objectively for a second. Under Model A, an autonomous AI is totally immune to the campaign finance, the donor lobbying, and the massive political egos that Tucker Carlson was criticizing earlier. I mean, it literally can't be bought. But the obvious risk is a loss of human agency. You risk a sort of digital authoritarianism. Model B, on the other hand, preserves our democratic legitimacy, our spiritual discernment, and our moral responsibility. But, and it's a big but, it retains all those classic human flaws.
Because really, the fundamental difference isn't how much the AI knows, it's who ultimately gets to decide. Think about it. Under Model B, an artificial superintelligence could provide the absolute perfect, mathematically sound, conflict-preventing solution to a massive global crisis, only for human politicians to just completely ignore it because of fear, their own ego, or short-term donor pressure. That is the massive, unavoidable risk of keeping humans in final control.
So, we're going to wrap up today's explainer with this really profound question drawn right from the text. Can sovereignty finally be brought into the light? Are we actually brave enough to move beyond the black box of power, beyond all those hidden networks and untraceable influences, and imagine an entirely new system of governance that actually prioritizes human flourishing? It's a massive question, and one we are all going to have to face very, very soon. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.